Okay, well, hello. That's a very interesting word because it reminds me of my father-in-law when he was doing his national service in the RAF in Norfolk. He met two young Danish ladies who had difficulty with his Paisley patois. So they asked him if there was a Scots word for hello, and he said, yes, keich. So I hope this isn't an indication of what you're going to think of my presentation tonight, but here we go. So it's annual ground rent, a practical approach by me. What's this about? Well, during and since the referendum debate, our opponents constantly undermined the economic case for independence based on the following points. Okay. Unionist claims which won't go away. And these apply regardless, of whether we've got Brexit or not, and these are the arguments that they will put the next time that we have a referendum. Oil revenues are volatile. If Scotland's public services are not subsidised, the UK taxpayers, then there would be massive public service cuts. We can't keep the pound sterling in independence. We might not want to keep it. Our credit status would be reduced, so government borrowing would be more expensive. Foreign investment would dry up, and many would leave on independence, and personal and business taxation would increase with independence. So how do we answer these challenges? We establish a system of public revenue which does not rely on oil revenue, does not rely on the largesse, perceived or otherwise, of the UK taxpayer, does not increase personal or business taxation, allows for an increase in public revenue, avoids government borrowing, can be implemented under devolution as well as independence, and is not affected by what currency we use. So it's a small ask. So what is annual ground rent? It's a fair way to fund all public services through every part of Scotland's land, built upon or not, contributing a rent without the need for any other type of Scottish, UK or local government taxation or charge. Okay? Now, Scotland's land, excluding the seabed, is 78 billion square metres. And to allow for the fact that most of urban Scotland comprises properties over 1 floor in height, we've multiplied the area defined as urban by a factor of 3. So we assume for the purposes of AGR that Scotland's land area is over 90 billion square metres. All right. So the total annual public expenditure, according to the most recent GERS report, which includes what's spent in Scotland by EU, UK, Scottish and local government agencies, it's over £68 billion. But we need more, not just to reverse the austerity agenda, we need substantially more public funds to transform Scotland's infrastructure, so let's increase the annual expenditure by 14% to £78 billion. And if we divide that by the AGR land area, that gives us an AGR rate per square metre of 86 pence. Okay. Would a flat rate not cripple farming and other land-intensive operations? Well, it would. Because an arable or rough grazing land of, that's about 100 acres, would pay annual ground rent of £336,000, which even with the cap payments is clearly not sustainable. By contrast, a typical flat would only attract AGR of £63. So we need to identify our land types and allocate a rate for each type, recognising its contribution to and drain on the public purse. Okay. So the 4 land types in Scotland are basically rough grazing, forest and woodland, arable and urban. And I've shown the percentage of the total and also the total number of square metres in each land type. Setting a rate per square metre for each land type, what we take into consideration is the fact that most folk live and work in urban areas. Arable land is more productive than rough grazing. Forest and woodland is more productive than rough grazing. Most public amenities are in urban areas and through intensive use require increased management, repair and replacement. Urban areas create greater wealth through the knowledge economy from a smaller area. But there is a social and environmental imperative to protect and repopulate rural Scotland. So the suggested rates are as follows. For rough grazing, it would be 1.4 pence per square metre. With woodland, it would be 3 pence. Arable, it would be 3 pence. And urban, it would be a whopping £3.93 per square metre. And that shows you the totals that we'd have. So from that, you will see that actually the urban rate actually creates about 90, or produces about 98% of the total public expenditure that we would be, or the total public revenue which we'd be looking for. Now, how to calculate your annual ground rent? Each landowner or property owner would calculate his or his liability by calculating the area of his land and floor space by the land type's rate, make the calculation return online to Revenue Scotland, and pay the rent either in one payment or over 10 months. So if you've got a semi-detached house, for example, or a terraced house, you would calculate your floor area of your ground floor and your first floor, and also your garden ground. In rural settings, only buildings would attract the urban rate. In urban rate, liability for common property would be divided by the number of owners of the common property. So if you've got a flat and a tenement of 6, you would calculate your own floor area of your flat, plus you'd 1/6 of the close, the back court, etc., and any other area that you share in common with your neighbours. Landowners have been entitled to recover the annual ground rent from their tenants. Revenue Scotland would carry out spot checks on returns with hefty penalties for inaccurate or dishonest returns. The returns would be a public register, so everyone's return would be transparent and largely self-policing. Most properties in Scotland are not unique. They're very similar in many respects, so you could go in and see what your neighbour return is and see whether you felt that they were being honest or otherwise, and as a result of that, the register could be largely self-policing. Examples of your total annual household building contribution. An arable farm with a farmhouse would pay about £17,359 a year. That's for 100 acres. A rough grazing one would only be £8,417. But your average house with a garden would be £1,120. Your average flat would be £300, and your small shop would be the same. Now, rough grazing of 687,820,000 square metres would be £9,629,480. Now, the reason I put that figure down is that equates to the land holding which Mr. Anders Poulsen, the Danish gentleman who is Scotland's second largest, or until this week I think, was Scotland's second largest private landowner, and I think he's just about to become our largest landowner. Just now, he does not pay any tax on the land that he owns. He pays it on the buildings, but not on the land. Weirdly, he actually pays the Danish Treasury for these land holdings in Scotland. So he doesn't pay anything in Scotland just now, but he pays as he is a Danish taxpayer. Okay. Now, what a person average annual earnings will save. Average annual earnings are roughly about 26,500. So you currently pay income tax and national insurance of roughly 4,400, council tax, Scottish water rates, an element of road tax, VAT. So your estimated total outlays or tax out of an income of 26,500 just now is £11,129. But with annual ground rent on an urban rate, you would pay £1,120. So you'd make a massive saving of over £10,000 a year. Some high-profile examples. Balmoral Castle, just the building. Currently Band H, its annual council tax is £2,700 because it doesn't actually go into the public sewers. The annual ground rent would put it up to nearly £55,000, and that's just the castle itself, not the outbuildings. BAE Systems Glasgow Yards. The combined annual commercial rates for Scotland and Govan is about nearly £490,000. With annual ground rent, it would be £4,634,704. However, BAE estimated annual net profit for 2015 alone from the Glasgow Yards was £150 million, of which the tax liability was about £30 million. And that would all be part of BAE's UK tax bill, which would be returned from their English registered office. So Scotland derives no credit for this in GERS. If BAE ran their Glasgow Yards as a separate business, they would save nearly £26 million in corporation tax alone, plus national insurance, VAT, and other things as well. So there would be a real benefit for commercial developments. Right, 180 hectares in Easterhouse. A couple of weeks ago, it was announced by Glasgow City Council that they were going to develop at long last 180 hectares of vacant ground over the next 20 years in Easterhouse. 20 years, another lost generation in Easterhouse. Current council tax and commercial rates on this site is nothing. With annual ground rent on the site with no development, it's over £7 million. But the estimated AGR on a site with mostly two-storey properties would be over £10 million. Inverary Castle. Current Band H, again, is 2,700. Again, this is just the building. The annual ground rent would be nearly £46,000. Former Co-op HQ in Glasgow. This is just a wee example, just opposite my office. There was a 6-storey building there, the Coffin End, as we called it, and the commercial rates in that for a number of years have been nothing. There was a fire a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago. It's a vacant eyesore site. It's still contributing nothing in commercial rates, but its owners have had the benefit of fire and rescue and police services. So the consequentials for you are no tax on income and endeavour, no tax on purchased goods and services, no tax on inheritance or capital, no need for tax advisors, so you can make all these accountants redundant, no council tax or commercial rates, no business taxation, no adverse effect on the market value of your home or business premises, certainty of how much you will pay at the start of any year, much higher disposable income for you to spend, invest and save as you see fit, and the opportunity for you to buy land as communities or individuals at lower prices. The consequentials for the big landowners are they can't sleep at night initially. There'll be a rush by large landowners to offload uneconomic land and buildings, thus initially reducing the market price substantially. They won't keep land which doesn't provide sufficient income to pay the AGR. They'll benefit, however, from all other assets not subject to inheritance or other wealth or capital taxes. It will be in their interest to develop, diversify and farm land they retain. And they won't claim ownership of land which is unproductive, which they presently do due to unspecific title boundaries. For example, the Duke of Argyll's titles originally said, "All inhale the lands of Argyll." So it was a brave person that would take him to court to try and establish that he didn't own part of the land unless they had a specific title to show that that was the case. Okay. The consequentials for local authorities, because they're big landowners however, they would increase their budgets by roughly 18%. I've given the example of Aberdeen City. There'd be savings in national insurance contributions, savings in other tax liabilities, but they would need to manage their land and property portfolio to meet the AGR charge. It would help housing shortage by releasing surplus land. It would reduce bureaucracy and major reduction in the empty properties and derelict sites. The consequentials for Scotland: certainty of source and amount of public revenue, no tax evasion or avoidance and 100% collection, because you can't take land with you, it's always there. Substantially more public and private funds to invest in Scotland's future and abolish poverty. All the wealth from our seas, and it's not been included in this, can be invested in a sovereign fund for future generations. Scotland becomes a true property owning and sharing democracy, encourages business to set up and invest here, encourage immigration of high-spending individuals. Public finances are always in credit. It reduces the bureaucracy of government because it's such an easy tax to collect. It really ends the black market, and who needs tax havens when you've got a system like this? Okay. Now, understanding the source of this substantial increase, a jaw-dropping savings by Nicola and Peter Public. Huge areas of privately owned derelict and empty land and floor space in urban Scotland. There's huge area of publicly owned land and floor space, estimated at 9 billion square metres, of which probably 10% is urban, not contributing to national revenue. Apart from buildings, all of rural and urban land contributes nothing directly to national revenue. Areas and properties owned by charities like National Trust are not contributing to national revenue. The foreshore, most of which is currently managed by the Crown Estate, contributes nothing to the national revenue. So the options under devolution are reimburse all or part of the UK imposed taxes to Scottish personal and corporate taxpayers, use part of these funds to create a basic national income to abolish poverty, give councils the opportunity to charge their own land type rates, exempt or relieve certain land holdings, for example charities or public land, from AGR, and options under independence. We wouldn't rely on oil revenues. We wouldn't rely on the largesse of the UK taxpayer. It doesn't increase personal or business taxation. It allows for an increase in public revenue, avoids government borrowing, is not affected by currency, but gives Scotland control of its economy. Okay, so join the debate. I've set up this website, www.annualgroundrent.com. Please register if you're interested in this, or indeed contact me at my email address to the office, graeme@conveyancingdirect.co.uk. So that's the presentation. Who would have thought you'd have heard from an SNP member talking Keith? Thank you.